The 1,000+ diplomats who'd demanded to witness the historic meeting now pressed against the chamber walls, instinct urging them away from the towering insectoid queen, despite security assurances. Captain Chen stood her ground in the center, aisle, acutely aware that she'd been plucked from military disgrace to potential extinction in less than 24 hours. "Impossible," General Ramirez muttered beside her. Their behavioral scans indicated pure predation patterns. "They've conquered 12 systems. 13, Mevthax corrected, her translator converting multi-toned clicks into flat English. "The Abrillion system surrendered yesterday." The Queen's upper limbs remained eerily still while her lower ones shifted restlessly against the reinforced floor. Her massive head, adorned with bioluminescent status markings, tilted toward Chen. "You understand what the others cannot. Explain." Chen cleared her throat, knowing the world watched this broadcast with collective breath held. "Their young undergo complete physical metamorphosis through multiple stages," she began, projecting the confidence that had once made her the youngest ever professor at West Point before her controversial papers on alien psychology ended her academic career. "Their biology is hyper-specialized for warfare, but that specialization comes with neurological trade-offs." She brought up images captured from Varaxian transmissions, comparison scans of their brain structures alongside similar imagery from a dozen Earth species. Their brains physically lack the structures associated with nurturing behaviors. No empathy centers, no oxytocin receptors, nothing we'd associate with parental bonding. A murmur spread through the chamber as understanding dawned. Mevthax's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. "In your crude terminology," the Queen elaborated, "we are the perfect predators. We cannot feel fear, we cannot feel remorse, we cannot be turned from purpose." She stepped forward, her immense shadow falling across the assembly. "But without caregivers, our hatchlings die. Always through our evolutionary history, we have formed symbiosis with gentler species. We protect them. They nurture our young through their vulnerable stages until metamorphosis." The projector switched to footage that made several diplomats gag. The systematic orbital bombardment of a green-blue planet. Mushroom clouds bloomed across continents while Vraxian warships maintained perfect formation above. "The Zindi were our caregivers for 8,000 years, Mevthax continued, dispassionately. "Our enemies, the Swarm, designed a pathogen specifically targeting their neural structure. Within one generation they were extinct. Without caregivers, our species faces the same fate." "And now you've come to Earth," Chen said, the pieces locking together in her mind. "After intercepting our broadcasts and analyzing human neural patterns." "Yes." The Battle Queen's multifaceted eyes reflected the overhead lights like blood-tinged diamonds. "Your species possesses exceptional nurturing capacity, even toward non-related offspring. You anthropomorphize everything from primitive mammals to inanimate objects. This flaw makes you perfect." She gestured to the cargo hold visualization on the main screen. Thousands of iridescent eggs in climate-controlled chambers. "We do not ask. We offer exchange. Your civilization receives our protection and technology. Selected humans provide care for our young. The alternative—" She let the statement hang unfinished. Chen met the alien queen's gaze steadily. "And if we refuse?" "Then both our species face extinction separately," Mevthax answered, the cold logic of predator evolution evident in her tone. "Together, we become unstoppable." The silence that followed stretched for 37 seconds. Chen counted each, 1, before the Secretary General found his voice. "We will need to discuss the specifics of this arrangement." Mevthax's exoskeleton shifted colors slightly, a ripple of iridescence that Chen's trained eye recognized as the closest thing to satisfaction the predator species could express. "Choose quickly," the Queen advised. "The eggs begin hatching in 6 days. Without proper bonding in the first hours, an entire clutch will be lost." 3 days after the Emergency Security Council decision, the New Zealand facility transformed from half-built research outpost to fortified nursery. Military transports moved under cover of an artificial storm system, Vraxian weather manipulation technology, demonstrating just one of many technological incentives that had swayed the vote. Dr. Cruz limped through the medical bay, his cane, tapping against polished floors still smelling of fresh sealant. Blood toxicity parameters established, he announced, reviewing data on his tablet. If these hatchlings secrete anything remotely harmful, we'll know instantly. Assuming our equipment can even detect it, Miranda countered, calibrating the incubation pods that would house the eggs upon arrival. Her hands moved with precision despite having been awake for 36 hours. We're operating on theoretical xenobiology at best. Captain Chen entered with Hiro Tanaka, both in the blue hazard suits that the Vraxian liaison had insisted wouldn't be necessary. Latest neural imaging, Hiro said, placing a holographic projector on the central table. It activated automatically, displaying rotating brain scans of both humans and Vraxians with highlighted regions. The complementary structures are extraordinary. Where they lack nurturing centers, we have hyper-developed ones. Where we lack predatory efficiency, they have specialized neural clusters. Almost as if we evolved to find each other, Cruz mused sarcastically, then shrugged at Chen's sharp look. What? Terminal cancer grants certain conversational privileges, Captain. Before she could respond, the facility alarm sounded. 3 short bursts indicating perimeter breach. Chen's comm unit crackled with security chatter about protesters. Cutting through the outer fence. Perfect timing, she muttered, grabbing her sidearm. The eggs are landing in 18 minutes. Correction, came a voice from the doorway. The Vraxian military observer, smaller than the Queen but still intimidatingly armored, stepped into the room. The eggs are here now. Emergency deployment was authorized when your perimeter sensors detected human aggression patterns. The observation window polarized briefly, then cleared to reveal the adjacent chamber where 6 obsidian spheres, each nearly a meter in diameter, now rested in temporary containment fields. Surface patterns shifted across each shell, pulsing, with internal bioluminescence. Those weren't scheduled to arrive until... Miranda began, then gasped as the nearest egg shuddered violently. They're hatching. The breach triggered an adrenal response in the Queen, the Vraxian explained clinically. She released the acceleration hormone, adaptation for survival when nesting grounds are threatened. The egg's surface fractured along previously invisible seams of viscous amber fluid seeping through the cracks. The security alarms intensified as the protest breach escalated to multiple points of intrusion. Chen made a split-second decision. Tanaka, Cruz, stay with the eggs. Miranda with me to secure the perimeter. Observer, whatever your name is, guard this door. I am designated Combat Specialist Vex, the Vraxian corrected, unsheathing natural blades from forearm carapaces. And I will not guard. I will eliminate threats. No. Chen stepped between Vex and the door. No lethal force. These are just frightened people. They threaten the hatchlings. Vex's multifaceted eyes narrowed. Elimination is logical. The argument was interrupted by a high, keening sound unlike anything they'd heard before. It cut through the alarm, through the security chatter, through rational thought itself. Everyone froze as the first egg split completely open. Miranda felt at first an overwhelming compulsion pulling her back toward the incubation chamber. The hatchling, she whispered, moving as if in a trance. It's calling. The tiny creature that emerged bore little resemblance to the nightmare warriors of its species. Translucent skin revealed a delicate interior circulatory system. Outsized eyes, not yet faceted like the adults, blinked wetly in the incubation chamber's soft light. Its limbs were soft and partially fused, nothing like the weaponized appendages it would eventually develop. Most shocking of all was its size, barely larger than a human infant. It trembled, keening that strange harmonic sound that seemed to bypass conscious thought and trigger something primal in the human brain. Fascinating, Cruz whispered, fighting the unexpected moisture in his eyes. It's weaponizing our oxytocin response. Pure evolutionary brilliance. Without conscious decision, Miranda moved to the containment field controls. "Don't override the containment," Chen ordered sharply. "We don't know if—" Too late. The field deactivated with a soft hum. Miranda reached in, her hands gentle but assured as she lifted the quivering alien infant. "Hello, little one," she whispered, and the keening immediately softened into a harmonious purr. "I'm right here." Day 87 brought the first crisis no one had anticipated. Nova's primal screams shattered 2 observation windows before the automated dampening systems engaged. Miranda found her charge convulsing in the playpen area, translucent skin bulging, with what appeared to be internal formations pushing outward. "Hold her down!" Dr. Cruz shouted over the alarm, preparing an injection of the xenobiotic painkiller they'd synthesized based on Vraxian biochemistry. "It's the first metamorphic spike." Miranda cradled the thrashing hatchling, ignoring the lacerations forming on her arms where Nova's skin began splitting to reveal sharp protrusions beneath. The once soft appendages now flexed with newly forming musculature, each movement tearing more of the juvenile skin layer. "The sedative isn't working," Cruz reported grimly, checking the biomonitors. "Heart rate still climbing. Neural activity off the charts. We need to move aside," came a mechanical voice from the doorway. Mevthax herself had arrived for the diplomatic inspection, her towering form made more imposing by ceremonial armor. The Vraxian queen approached the writhing hatchling with clinical detachment. "This one is defective. The pain response indicates improper neural development." From a compartment in her armor, she withdrew a device resembling an ornate dagger. "Termination is standard protocol." "No." Miranda tightened her grip despite the blood now freely flowing from multiple cuts on her arms. "She's just in pain. She's scared." "Vraxians do not feel fear," Mevthax corrected dispassionately. "The juvenile system is rejecting the metamorphic process. Continued existence would be inefficient." Chen stepped between the Queen and Miranda. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, termination violates our agreement. These hatchlings are under our care, using our methods." "Your methods appear inadequate," the Queen observed, mandibles clicking in what the humans had learned to recognize as disapproval. "The pain indicates failure." Miranda, ignoring them both, began to sing. The melody was simple, a lullaby her grandmother had sung during thunderstorms when Miranda was small, terrified of the lightning. She rocked Nova gently, continuing despite the increasing damage to her own arms. "Omomi ma beru," she sang softly. "Imolikoni pae." The biomonitors registered the change first, a gradual decrease in Nova's frantic heart rate, a stabilization of neural patterns. The thrashing slowed, then stopped entirely. Where the hatchling's skin had split, iridescent plates now emerged, more smoothly, the transition less violent. Cruz stared at his tablet in disbelief. "Her system is producing an analog to endorphins, and something else I can't identify yet. She's self-regulating." Mevthax moved closer, her massive head tilting in analysis. "Unprecedented," she declared, returning the termination device to its compartment. "Explain this intervention." "It's not an intervention," Miranda corrected, still gently rocking Nova. "It's comfort. It's love." "Irrelevant terminology," the Queen dismissed. "The physiological response is what matters. Your vocalizations triggered biochemical adaptation." Chen and Cruz exchanged glances, recognizing the implications simultaneously. Cruz carefully extracted a small sample from one of Nova's newly formed exoskeletal plates. "I need to compare this to the pure-raised juvenile samples," he whispered to Chen. "But I'd bet my remaining months that this metamorphic tissue is structurally different." On the observation level above, General Winters watched with narrowed eyes, recording the entire interaction on a secure channel outside the facility's monitored network. His contact at Neurovance Pharmaceuticals would pay handsomely for footage, showing the hatchling's response to human bonding behaviors. As the crisis subsided, Miranda noticed something extraordinary. Nova's newly formed eye structures focused on her face with unmistakable recognition. The hatchling's appendages, now tipped with the first signs of the natural weapons they would become, reached up toward Miranda's face with surprising gentleness. Bond provider, Nova vocalized, using the Vraxian term their education program had taught them. Then, struggling with the unfamiliar human phonemes, me mother, Mevthax went utterly still. A reaction the humans had learned indicated extreme surprise or threat assessment. They do not use this term with Vraxian caregivers, she stated. Ever. Cruz couldn't resist a smile despite the gravity of the moment. Well, Your Majesty, that's because they've never had mothers before. Only caregivers. There's a difference. The Queen's multifaceted eyes reflected the overhead lights as she processed this distinction. Continue your observations, she finally instructed. This development requires the further analysis. Hero's suspicions began with missing tissue samples, not enough to trigger automated inventory alerts, but sufficient for someone methodically collecting genetic material. Then came doctored security footage, camera blind spots appearing during specific personnel shifts. He cataloged the patterns meticulously, suspecting military involvement but lacking proof until he accessed maintenance logs for the facility's secure network. His breakthrough came at 3:17 a.m., tracking an unauthorized data packet to a research substation 5 kilometers from the main facility. The contents confirmed his worst fears. Detailed analysis of Vraxian immune responses to tailored pathogens. The demonstration day should have been triumphant. After 6 months of intensive care, the first clutch of hatchlings had progressed further than anyone anticipated. Nova and 5 others would showcase their remarkable development for media and diplomatic representatives, proving the program's success. Instead, as the cameras rolled and Captain Chen explained the hatchlings' accelerated learning capabilities, Hero was racing through maintenance tunnels beneath the facility, having detected unusual movement in the isolated medical wing where a hatchling called Vex-T was recovering from a minor accident. He found the collection team already at work, 4 individuals in unmarked tactical gear, extracting neural tissue samples from the sedated hatchling. Blood samples laid out in specialized containment units confirmed his theory. They weren't just studying the Vraxians, they were weaponizing them. This area is restricted, Hero announced, activating the emergency recording device in his pocket. Step away from the hatchling immediately. The team leader removed his mask, revealing familiar features. Lieutenant Colonel Robertson, General. Winters, Chief of Security Operations. Dr. Tanaka. The General mentioned you might be a problem. Robertson gestured casually, and 2 of his team members moved to block the exit. We're simply securing humanity's future. These creatures have conquered 13 star systems. Do you really believe they came here out of desperation? I've seen the data. They need us. No, Robertson corrected. They need something from us. Once they have it, what happens to Earth? We're creating an insurance policy. Above them in the main presentation hall, disaster unfolded with unexpected speed. Nova, mid-demonstration of linguistic capabilities, suddenly stiffened. Her newly developed exoskeleton flared with bioluminescent patterns never previously observed. The other 5 hatchlings responded instantly with identical patterns. Something's wrong, Miranda whispered, recognizing Nova's distress signs immediately. Chen's comm unit erupted with security alerts. The Vraxian warship in orbit had raised shields and powered weapon systems without warning. Mevthax, attending via holographic projection, began issuing battle orders in her native language. What's happening? Demanded the UN Secretary General. They're connected, Miranda realized, watching the synchronized movements of all hatchlings present. They've always been connected, telepathically. In the medical wing, Hero lunged for the alarm as Robertson raised his weapon. The gunshot echoed through the confined space, catching Hero in the shoulder and sending him sprawling beside the examination table where Vex-T lay. Nothing personal, Doctor, Robertson said, checking his watch. We have 4 minutes before extraction. Hero's hand found Vex-T's, still soft, not yet fully transformed with the weaponized appendages of adult Vraxians. Blood pooled beneath him as consciousness began to fade. I'm sorry, he whispered to the sedated hatchling. What happened next defied every assessment of Vraxian developmental capabilities. Vex T's eyes snapped open despite the sedation. The juvenile alien's newly formed neural structures lit with internal bioluminescence that spread along developing neural pathways. The telepathic distress signal amplified from one mind to many. Throughout the facility, every hatchling began emitting the same harmonic resonance, a sound between a scream and a battle cry that collapsed 2 security officers into unconsciousness and shattered glass throughout the complex. In orbit, Mevthax received the collective distress of her species' young. The Vraxian battlecruiser's main weapons system began charging, targeting coordinates locked on the facility itself. Chen's tactical display showed the energy buildup. "They're going to fire on us," she announced with eerie calm. "We have less than 3 minutes to prove this isn't an authorized attack." Miranda clutched Nova protectively as the hatchling's distress signals intensified. "Where is it coming from? What's happening to them?" "Medical wing," Nova managed through newly developed vocal structures, her first complete sentence in human language forming under duress. "They are hurting Vextai. They want to hurt all of us." The high command chamber aboard the Vraxian flagship Inevitable Dominance vibrated with tension. Battlemaster Vex Krag, his exoskeleton bearing the scars of 17 major campaigns, faced Mevthax across the strategic projection table. "The humans have changed them," he insisted, manipulating the holographic display to show side-by-side neural scans. "These are not true Vraxians. They retain juvenile thought patterns well into second-phase development." Mevthax studied the scans dispassionately. "The cognitive structures are enhanced, not diminished. Their problem-solving capabilities exceed pure raised standards by 37%. At what cost?" Vex Krag's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation that would have been suppressed in formal settings before this crisis. "They create art. They compose harmonic arrangements with no tactical purpose. Yesterday, the one designated Nova refused to complete predator response training, claiming it caused unnecessary suffering to the target organisms." The Queen remained motionless, a Vraxian characteristic indicating deep calculation rather than indecision. "Adaptation ensures survival. For 8,000 generations, our evolution has optimized for combat efficiency. Perhaps this new cognitive path offers different advantages." "Heresy." Vexakrag moved closer, towering even over the imposing Queen. Around the chamber, other high-ranking warriors tensed, natural weapons partially emerging from specialized sheaths. "You have been contaminated by human thinking. The Council of Veterans has convened. I speak with their authority now." "You challenge me?" Mevthax's voice remained level, but subtle shifts in her exoskeleton's coloration indicated battle readiness. "I preserve our species' evolutionary path," he corrected. 60% of the fleet stands with tradition. You will recall all hatchlings for proper conditioning, or we will extract them ourselves." On Earth, beneath the Montana facility's dome, Nova sat cross-legged on the observation platform overlooking the terraformed habitat. Around her, 11 other third-phase juveniles maintained similar meditative postures, their exoskeletons pulsing with synchronized bioluminescent patterns. Miranda monitored their vital signs with Dr. Cruz, whose deteriorating condition now confined him to a hover chair. "It's the most complex neural synchronization they've attempted," she noted. 12 minds linked simultaneously for over 3 hours. "They're preparing," Cruz replied, his once robust frame now skeletal. "They know metamorphosis is coming, Captain." Chen, now Director Chen of the Global Nurture Initiative, joined them at the observation console. "The latest scans confirm it. The chrysalis formation is beginning in Nova's peripheral nervous system. The others will follow within days." Miranda couldn't mask her concern. "And we still don't know how the human influence will affect the final transformation." "That's what frightens both sides," Chen said quietly. "Uncertainty." Below them, Nova opened her multifaceted eyes, now a striking iridescent blue instead of the solid obsidian of pure Vraxians. She rose with fluid grace that combined Vraxian precision with distinctly human movement patterns, and approached the observation window. "We have received concerning information through the link," she announced, her voice melodious compared to the harsh tones of adult Vraxians. Vexicrag has challenged the Queen Mother for dominance. He intends to terminate the nurture program and recondition all human-raised juveniles. Can they do that? Miranda asked, instinctively reaching toward her charge, though separated by reinforced glass. They will try, Nova answered. The traditionalists fear what we are becoming. They cannot comprehend that evolution has many paths. Chen frowned. How long do we have? The challenge ritual takes place in 3 lunar cycles. If Vexcrag prevails, his forces will move immediately. That's only days before your metamorphosis begins, Cruz noted grimly. No coincidence, I imagine. Nova's exoskeleton rippled with complex patterns that the human team had learned to recognize as determination. We must accelerate our development. The 12 of us have made a decision. She placed her partially weaponized hand against the glass, mirroring Miranda's gesture on the other side. We choose to enter metamorphosis early, voluntarily. The implications stunned the humans into silence. Premature metamorphosis carried unknown risks, with no historical precedent in Vraxian biological records. Nova, Miranda finally managed. The danger is necessary, Nova finished. We cannot remain between forms when the traditionalists arrive. We must either become what we are meant to be, her multifaceted eyes focused with unmistakable emotion, or perish as failed experiments. Above them, undetected by Earth's monitoring systems, a stealth scout ship dispatched by Vexicrag entered high orbit, its sensors focused on the metamorphosis facility and its precious, controversial occupants. The metamorphosis chamber hummed, with energy readings that repeatedly overloaded the facility's sensors. 12 chrysalises hung suspended in specialized containment fields, each pulsing with bioluminescence that followed no discernible pattern. The inner structures, visible through advanced imaging, rearranged themselves hourly in configurations that defied conventional Vraxian biology. Dr. Cruz, now confined to his medical bed adjacent to the chamber, monitored the process through neural interfaces as his body continued its rapid decline. Remarkable, he whispered to Chen, who had barely left the observation deck in 3 days. Their neural structures are reorganizing completely. Look at the prefrontal development. It's neither human nor Vraxian, but something new. Above them, the orbital battle between Mevthak's loyalists and Vexcrag's traditionalists illuminated the night sky, visible to civilians worldwide despite official reassurances about planned exercises. Antimatter explosions resembled new stars, briefly flaring before fading, while energy weapon exchanges created aurora-like phenomena across the northern hemisphere. How much time do we have? Chen asked, reviewing tactical projections on her secure tablet. Based on descent vectors of Vexcrag's dropships? Cruz shrugged weakly. Hours, not days. But that's not what concerns me. He gestured toward the primary monitoring station where Miranda hadn't moved for nearly 30 hours, her eyes fixed on Nova's chrysalis. The emotional investment was necessary for their development. But what happens when they emerge? In traditional Vraxian metamorphosis, the final transition produced adult warriors with no memory of their juvenile stage, a clean neural slate optimized for combat without emotional encumbrance. The metamorphosis supervisor from the Loyalist faction had made this abundantly clear during preparatory briefings. They will not remember you, she had told the human caregivers clinically. Recognition of nurturers is evolutionarily disadvantageous. Attachment creates hesitation. Hesitation results in death. The facility's perimeter alarms activated as the first wave of atmospheric entry was detected. The traditionalists had broken through the orbital defense line. Chen immediately initiated evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel while security teams moved to defensive positions. Inside Nova's chrysalis, something unprecedented was happening. Instead of the dormant neural state typical during metamorphosis, her brain activity resembled REM sleep patterns seen in humans. Active, processing, dreaming, similar patterns appeared in all 12 chrysalises, with occasional synchronization suggesting continued telepathic communication. The first explosion rocked the outer defense perimeter, as Miranda pressed her hand against the transparent barrier, separating her from Nova's chrysalis. "I don't know if you can hear me," she whispered, "but I need you to know that whatever you become, whatever you remember or forget, The chamber's lights flickered as another impact shook the facility. Cruz's monitoring equipment registered a sudden spike across all metamorphic signatures. "It's happening," he called out, struggling to sit upright. "They're responding to the attack." Nova's chrysalis began vibrating, hairline fractures appearing across its iridescent surface. The remaining 11 followed suit, each developing identical patterns. The facility's security feed showed Vexkrog's forces breaching the secondary perimeter, their adult Varaxian warriors moving with terrifying efficiency through human defensive positions. "We need to evacuate you now," Chen insisted, grabbing Miranda's arm. "We can't risk—" A blinding flash of energy erupted from Nova's chrysalis, shattering it completely. The metamorphic fluid evaporated instantly, leaving no residue. Where the translucent shell had hung moments before, a figure now stood on the chamber floor. Nova had emerged, taller than any juvenile but still smaller than full-grown Vraxians. Her exoskeleton gleamed with patterns that shifted like flowing water, responding to her emotional state rather than displaying the static status markings of traditional warriors. Most striking were her eyes, compound like all Vraxians but with visible irises that glowed with bioluminescent blue. The other chrysalises fractured simultaneously, releasing the remaining 11 juveniles in perfect synchronization. They moved with fluid grace that combined Vraxian precision with human expressiveness, forming a defensive circle facing outward. Nova looked directly at Miranda, her multifaceted eyes focusing with unmistakable recognition. "Mother," she said, voice resonating with harmonics impossible for ordinary Vraxian vocal structures. "I remember everything." The neural integration chamber resembled a hybrid of Vraxian biotechnology and human medical equipment. Miranda lay on a reclined platform, surrounded by monitoring devices while technicians attached gossamer-thin connectors to specific points on her scalp and spine. Across the chamber, Mevthax underwent a similar procedure, though her massive form required specialized equipment. The risk factors remained significant, Dr. Petrova warned, reviewing final brain scans. Human neural architecture was never designed to process Vraxian thought patterns. The evolved juveniles can serve as bridges, but even with Nova mediating the connection, she shook her head. The chance of permanent damage exceeds 60%. The alternative is extinction, Chen reminded her, watching as the swarm's advance appeared on strategic displays. 3 outer colonies had already gone silent, their automated defense systems overwhelmed within hours. The swarm adapts to every conventional tactic. We need something they cannot predict. On a nearby medical bed, Hiro Tanaka reviewed his own scans with grim acceptance. His shoulder injury from the betrayal incident had never properly healed, but his experience with Vraxian neural patterns made him one of 12 humans cleared for the integration protocol. "It's not just physical risk," he cautioned. "Vraxian consciousness is profoundly alien, evolved for apex predation without empathy constraints. The psychological impact of experiencing their mind state, even briefly—" "I know what I'm volunteering for," Miranda interrupted, her eyes finding Nova across the room. The evolved Vraxian stood nearly 7 feet tall now, her exoskeleton shifting through patterns that reflected her concern. "We've shared dreams already. During her metamorphosis, I glimpsed what they are." The chamber sealed as final preparations completed, Mevthax's multifaceted eyes fixed on Miranda with analytical intensity. "You understand that if your consciousness fragments during integration, protocol requires termination," the Queen stated. "For both participants." Miranda nodded. "And you understand that experiencing human emotions might permanently alter your neural architecture. A necessary tactical risk," the Queen acknowledged. For a moment, her exoskeleton shifted patterns in a configuration Miranda recognized from Nova, the closest thing to uncertainty a Vraxian could express. Nova approached, placing one hand on Miranda's forehead and the other on Mevthax's cranial plate. "I will serve as conduit and stabilizer," she explained, her harmonious voice carrying subtle undertones of tension. Mother, focus on your strongest memories, the ones that define your understanding of humanity. Battle Queen, concentrate on your tactical knowledge of the swarm's weaknesses. The technicians initiated the sequence as Nova's exoskeleton began, glowing with increasing intensity. The chamber's lights dimmed automatically in response. The connection, when it formed, was nothing like Miranda had expected. There was no gradual merging, no sense of another consciousness alongside hers. Instead, her entire perception shattered and reformed instantly. She experienced sensory input through compound eyes that parsed movement with microscopic precision, felt the predatory alertness of a nervous system evolved for perfect killing. Efficiency, accessed memory structures containing 13 conquered star systems with clinical detachment. Simultaneously, Mevthax underwent her own perceptual crisis. For the first time in her existence, the Battle Queen experienced human emotions without analytical distance. Raw grief from Miranda's memories of her brother's death in the Pacific War, the overwhelming protectiveness she felt toward Nova, the irrational hope that drove human persistence against impossible odds. Stabilizing, Nova announced, her own consciousness serving as interpreter between incompatible neural architectures. Neural bridge at 43% capacity and holding. On the strategic displays, the swarm flagship entered Earth's outer detection perimeter, its biological hull absorbing scanner signals rather than reflecting them. The massive vessel resembled a cluster of interconnected organs more than conventional spacecraft, surrounded by thousands of smaller craft that moved with hive-mind coordination. Through the neural bridge, Mevthax supplied critical knowledge. The swarm operated through distributed consciousness, each vessel containing fragments of the collective intelligence. Their standard approach involved systematic probing of defensive weaknesses, feeding tactical data back to the central intelligence for real-time adaptation. They've never failed, came the Queen's thought across the bridge, carrying undertones of grudging respect for a worthy enemy. Their adaptation algorithms are perfect. Not against the unpredictable, Miranda countered, transmitting concepts alien to Vraxian thinking. Intuitive leaps, emotional decisions, calculated risk-taking that defied logical analysis. As the first wave of swarm attack craft entered Earth's atmosphere, the neural bridge achieved full synchronization. Through similar chambers worldwide, 11 other human Vraxian pairs linked into the network, their hybrid evolved children serving as bridges. For the first time in galactic history, two apex species merged their cognitive advantages, not through conquest or assimilation, but through complementary alliance. 3 years after the swarm's retreat, the lunar colony gleamed against the stark moonscape, its domes and spires incorporating both human aesthetic considerations and Vraxian structural efficiency. Within the central nursery dome, Miranda observed the hatching area from her hover chair, the neural damage from the integration evident in her trembling hands and prematurely gray hair. The last clutch is beginning to emerge, Nova noted, her exoskeleton shifting through patterns of anticipation. Now fully matured, she stood 8 feet tall, her form powerful, yet distinctly different from pure raised Vraxians. The integration of human influence had altered even her final physical development. Her weaponized appendages remained formidable, but capable of finer manipulations. The emotional expressiveness of her exoskeleton patterns had become more pronounced rather than diminishing with maturity. "How many survived transit?" Miranda asked, maneuvering closer to the observation window. 37 eggs remained viable, Nova answered. The developmental signatures are unprecedented. These will be the first generation conceived with dual-species genetic influence. The unique experiment had begun shortly after the swarm conflict ended. While direct biological reproduction between humans and Vraxians remained impossible, the neural integration had left permanent changes in both species. Vraxian warriors who participated in the merged battle network retained fragments of human emotional capacity, while their human counterparts developed enhanced spatial temporal processing. Most surprisingly, when these altered individuals became biological parents, their offspring showed subtle but measurable differences. Human children with enhanced reflexes and pattern recognition, Vraxian eggs with modified neural markers suggesting retained emotional capacity from inception rather than acquired through nurturing. The path toward true biological integration had begun. Evolution accelerated through conscious cooperation rather than random mutation. Across the chamber, Ambassador Mevthax entered with Captain Chen, now Earth's diplomatic liaison, to the colony. The former Battle Queen moved differently than before the integration, her predatory efficiency tempered by a more measured approach that other Vraxians initially interpreted as weakness, until she decisively defeated 3 successive challengers. The swarm fragments continue their internal conflict, she reported, approaching the observation area. Our long-range scouts confirm they've destroyed 2 of their own hub worlds in factional warfare. Chen nodded. Exactly as predicted. They couldn't adapt to the concept of cooperative evolution. Their entire biological imperative centered on assimilation through conquest. They encountered something their perfect adaptation algorithms couldn't process, Miranda agreed. 2 apex species choosing symbiosis over competition. The first egg began hatching, its shell splitting along precisely formed seams. Unlike traditional Vraxian hatchings, this process proceeded without distress vocalization. The emerging infant seemed calm, its movements deliberate. Extraordinary, Nova whispered as the hatchling emerged fully. The eye structures are already showing iris differentiation. More striking was the infant's immediate response to its surroundings. Rather than the instinctive defensive posture of traditional Vraxian hatchlings, it oriented toward both Nova and Miranda with equal interest, its tiny appendages reaching outward in a gesture unmistakably seeking connection. Mevthax studied the hatchling with analytical intensity. The capacity for bond formation appears innate rather than induced, she observed, a true evolutionary adaptation. The remaining eggs began hatching in sequence, each new emergence confirming the pattern. These offspring were neither purely Vraxian nor influenced by external nurturing. They represented something genuinely new, a species born with dual heritage. Miranda reached out, allowing the first hatchling to grasp her finger with surprising gentleness. Its exoskeleton, still soft and developing, briefly shifted color to match her skin tone, demonstrating empathic mimicry previously unseen in pure Vraxians. Of any age, what will they become? Chen wondered aloud, watching as human and Vraxian caregivers moved through the chamber, each attending to the hatchlings with their complementary approaches. Nova's exoskeleton rippled with patterns representing possibility, a complex emotional state no pure Vraxian could have expressed. Something better than either of us alone, she answered. The deadliest warriors in the galaxy learning to nurture, the most empathic nurturers learning strategic perfection. Miranda smiled, feeling the gentle pressure of the hatchling's grip. Not deadliest anymore, she corrected. Strongest perhaps, but in an entirely new way. Beyond the colony's protective domes, Earth hung in the black void, a blue reminder of the unexpected sanctuary where the galaxy's most feared predators had discovered their greatest evolutionary leap forward came not through conquest, but connection.